It's not an electric 911, but it's about as close as we'll get to that today. Like any true sports car maker, they weaponize that technology to make the car more potent. I'm Nema from MVL Leasing, and this is a 2025 Porsche 911 Targa 4 GTS Hybrid. Don't forget to like and subscribe and comment and hit that bell so you know every time we release a new video. 2025 marks the beginning of 992.2, which is the life cycle improvement for this generation of 911. And they kind of came out of the gate with this car, the Targa 4 GTS. So there's a few significant improvements which we're going to highlight, but first I just want to get some numbers out of the way and talk about some of the things that make this car special over the car that it replaced. So the size of the engine has been increased from 3 liters to 3.6. It also has what's called, for a 911 or a Porsche first, it has what's called a electric exhaust gas turbocharger. Now, since it's a hybrid, it has battery power as well with the electric motor. So when you combine all that horsepower, you have about 533 horsepower and just shy of 450 foot-pounds of torque. The way the car kind of sets itself apart from the model that it replaced, I'm just going to highlight a few of the things in the front end which kind of show where kind of Porsche is going with a lot of these things. So right off the hop, the first thing that I noticed when it comes to these 992.2s are these vertical fins on your air dams. So before they were horizontal, now they're vertical. Not only that, these are active. So these swivel like this to alter your aerodynamics and alter how the air is managed when you're feeding these radiators. Now, since the car is electric and it's turbocharged, cooling is even more of a priority than it was before because electric motors require cooling just like your turbochargers and your motor oil requires that as well. In the middle here, you can see that the car has the adaptive radar. This helps with all your driver's aids. Just above that is your parking camera. So this is pointing downwards and it's kind of a fisheye, so you can see when you're getting close to a curb or an obstruction wherever you're parking. The next thing that kind of denotes 992.2 is the revised headlights. So the headlights before had 4 dots and now they kind of have 4 dashes. This is kind of a giveaway that you're looking at a 992.2. These are what Porsche calls the HD matrix headlights. So in these headlights are adaptive projectors that contain just over 30,000 pixels to help distribute light properly. It's a very high-end lighting system. It's very cutting edge, and a lot of manufacturers have been doing this, like Mercedes and BMW and Audi as well. Okay, so let's break down the name. So it's a 911 Targa 4 GTS. So 911 is a 911, obviously. 4 denotes all-wheel drive, and GTS is probably the highest performing model that you can get that's slated just beneath the turbo. Targa denotes the kind of body that it has. So a Targa top is kind of somewhere in between a coupe and a convertible. So what happens is you have a piece that goes just above the front occupants that kind of goes and tucks just over the engine. And you have this unique piece of glass and a cross member that goes over the car that is kind of an iconic look. They've been making Targas since, I believe, the 70s. So I call it a gentleman's Porsche, and I think it's a good trade-off between somebody who wants a coupe but kind of enjoys a convertible as well, without having to kind of marry that idea. When we make our way around to the side here, there's a couple important things that I want to point out when it comes to this specific Targa. This one has the center locking wheels. The wheels are finished in gloss black. Whoever had spec'd this car pretty much wanted black everything, which is just my speed. So the brakes on this particular car are your standard steel braking system. So it's still a big 6-piston Brembo brake caliper. This one's finished in black with a white Porsche script on it. Now, despite being steel brakes, these are not discount brakes whatsoever. They still perform extremely well. They're internally ventilated and they're cross-drilled and they're attached to the rotor hat with spokes. This is all to help manage heat. If you're taking the car on the street, this is more than enough to stop this car, despite the extra weight from all the hybrid components. Very effective. These new 911s that contain this technology, Porsche calls it T-Hybrid, which means turbo hybrid. And they kind of put that in that Porsche font right here on the door, just to remind everybody. The mirrors have been revised on this car over the 992.1. You still retain the same semi-flush door handles that kind of expose themselves when you lock and unlock the car. So if I was to press unlock, sometimes you can set it up so when you walk up to the car, the door handles present themselves. When you lock it, they go flush. I think that's a really nice feature. Now, the one interesting thing about 992s is that prior to the 992 generation, which started in 2020, you were able to choose between a narrow body 911 and a wide body 911. So if you had a 911 that was an S, or a 911 that was an all-wheel drive, or a combination of both, you got a default wide body. So the track for the front wheels is wider than a regular car, but the most noticeable difference would be your rear wheel arches. They tend to kind of swing out like hips, and they step out a little bit more. I think it's a really nice feature, and if I was to ever have a 911, I would definitely want one that's a wide body, because it makes the car seem a little bit more muscular. Now, a lot of these cars that have the wide body, like now, they're all like this. You have what they used to call the dog leg. So it's basically a piece of paint protection film that is right on the front of this haunch. And this is really just to protect this panel against road debris and stuff like that, because when you have it sticking out this much, you're going to be catching a lot of debris, and over time it's going to basically dust this panel and ruin your clear coat. So this is on there from the factory. On a black car, it looks really good. It's almost not noticeable. On the lighter color cars, over time, just like with anything, when the sun hits it enough, they tend to go a little bit yellow. But on a black car, you just don't notice it. So looks wise, it lasts a little bit longer. This Targa 4 GTS has Goodyear Eagle F1 tires. Now it's a really good tire. It's a ZR rated tire. This car tops out at about 312 kilometers an hour. So you need a rubber that will be able to maintain its grip and things like that when you're at those speeds. For a 911, handling is always a priority. So the way that the tire is designed, or the tread pattern, is indicative of a car that can carve corners. The way that the tread is on the shoulder, which is probably where most of the weight of the car is going to be on when you're in a corner, is nice and kind of bricky with a little bit of tread depth. Now, when the higher performing tire you have, sometimes the tread depth doesn't look as deep as a standard passenger car tire. Now, that's all for grip. So some of these tires come from the factory with not as much tread depth as one would think. But this is just a compromise when you're trying to get a performance tire. Now, I believe this is a double staggered setup. So you have 21-inch tire in the back. It's a 315 tire. And then you have a 245 20-inch tire in the front. Even though the car is all-wheel drive, the all-wheel drive system is kind of biased to the rear, and this is all for performance. But when you have a car like that has a little bit of extra weight, like this one does, you need to. It really helps to have a little bit of power in the front in order to help pull yourself out of a corner. Standard feature on this car is full four-wheel steering. That's a really good feature, especially for a car that handles. So when you're at high speeds, the wheels turn in the same direction. We're talking a matter of a couple degrees. And at low speeds, they turn in opposing directions. So even though the 911, based on its wheelbase and general size, it's already a very maneuverable car. So when you add the four-wheel drive system, you can pull in and out of parking spaces with ease, even if it looks like spaces looks a little bit dicey. When we come to the back, we see more revisions when it comes to 992.2. So we'll start with your engine cover. So your engine cover is revised here. Like these grills that are on top of the engine are revised, and so is your third brake light. This particular car was equipped with gray tail lights. So although they look gray now that the car is off, they do actually blink red. Now the cool thing with 992 is that all 992s have this one continuous light that goes across the back. Visually, this makes the car look wider. And prior to this generation, the only way you got the one continuous light that goes across the back of you, you had a 911 that was all-wheel drive. So this is an idea that they've kind of ran with now and became permanent, just like they made all 911s of this generation wide body. I think it's a nice touch, and it makes the car look a lot more aggressive. Your Porsche lettering protrude a little bit more from where they're based, so they appear to kind of give you that floating look. I always liked this when they did that. And again, whoever had spec'd this out murdered everything out. All of the lettering for the Porsche badge and for the model number and the trim is all gloss black. I think that's really nice. You have a revised rear diffuser. You still have the exhaust in the center. They kind of spaced them apart now and made them a little bit oval shaped. At the bottom of the diffuser, they each have their own diffuser trim. Where the exhaust tips and the trim surrounding it kind of protrude a little bit more, and I think it's good because it gives the car a little bit more ground effect. The tail lights changed a little bit. So one thing that they kept was your one continuous light, but when you are changing lanes or you have your hazard lights on, you still have this lower light now that does all the blinking. It's just a little bit more prominent. It still has it in the 992.1, but with this one, it just changed shape just a little bit, but still offers that optically wide look. Like I said, these mirrors are revised for 992.2. They look a little bit more angular, and they look a little bit not as tall as the previous one. This particular car has the parking cameras, so you can see them sticking out right here. It's very difficult to notice and doesn't kind of stick out like on some of these Ferraris that have that same surround view feature. Now the Targas, you can always know you're looking at a Targa, if you can't tell by the rear glass, is by this cross member. Now these ones can usually be had in like a brushed aluminum look. This one is in matte black with the matte black Targa badge on it. This is how I would prefer it. This is how I would order it. Every spec on this car is probably exactly how I would order one of these cars. But it kind of goes up and over like this. And when we're going to show you a video, we're going to show you very shortly how this roof actually opens and closes, because this rear glass kind of comes and does a little bit of a dance, and then the roof kind of goes into place. Since we're on the outside of the car, it's kind of hard to notice unless I pointed it out to you. When the roof is down, you have a little motorized spoiler that's on the top of your window frame here. The reason why, the purpose of this is that when your roof is down, this kind of sticks upwards and helps shoot the air kind of over, so as it doesn't kind of get caught up in the cabin. This is one of the features that are kind of inherent with a Targa and kind of perfectly illustrate how it's a good blend between a coupe and a convertible, because I still get that open top driving experience without having to commit to all of the other bits and bobs that help reduce turbulence inside the cabin. Really nice feature. So when I stop the roof here, you can kind of get an idea as to the intricacy of all these motors and arms and stuff that kind of actuate this roof. But what I wanted to show you is this kind of clamshell window that you have here. I think it's a beautiful piece of glass. And the one thing, I know that this car is tinted, and it is, ask anyone who's an experienced tinting specialist, it is not easy to tint this piece of glass. In fact, what you have to do is, only because it's difficult to get to the very edge of this glass because of its shape, you have to remove all of the inner trim in order to properly tint that glass. I think it's needed from the factory. You do have a factory level of UV protection, but it still allows a little bit of light inside the car. And when you tint it, it just kind of lessens that. And when you have a black car, it kind of ties in really nicely and kind of blurs the line between glass and body panels. So I just wanted to point that out. You can also see where the roof kind of sits in this nice carpeted area and things like that. But I love this type of engineering and watching how it works, because to design this and see it in action is just, I don't know, I just kind of nerd out when I see that stuff. Okay, now that we're in the inside of the car, not a whole lot has changed, but there are some significant things that have changed that I'd like to point out to you. So, first couple things. Now, this one being a Targa, on your door sill here, which is dry carbon, not something I see very often on a 911, there's a little outline or a silhouette of a Targa. It's really nice and kind of highlights the special model that you're driving. Now, this car has premium package. So we get the Bose sound system, which is a really nice sound system. Porsche has never really disappointed me with their sound system, even if they weren't Bose. So I know Porsche knows their sound systems really well. Light revisions on the steering wheel. This car was equipped with the Alcantara steering wheel. We've talked about Alcantara, the pros, the cons. One pro, it looks really good and kind of indicates that, hey, let's have some fun. One thing that they changed for 992.2 is your light control module and your ignition. So before, there used to be two circles here above my left knee with like rotary knobs that you can adjust to change your lights from automatic to just your parking lights or whatever. Now they're just buttons. And now you actually have a start button. So despite having keyless entry and keyless go and stuff like that, you still had something that kind of looked like those older key switches where you kind of turn it like this. They've gotten rid of that. A lot of people don't like it. I actually like it. It kind of tidies this area up a bit, and I think it's taken them a long time to actually go with a start button. The only other thing I would do is just maybe get it done in red, so it just stands out a little bit more. Speaking of red, you have this drive mode button on your steering wheel. So this is a quick way for you to switch between all your different driving modes without having to screw around with your infotainment and stuff like that. It keeps all your attention front and center, which is where it should be. So what this does is it gets that electric motor in your turbocharger going and kind of gives you a quick little bit of boost just for a 20-second interval. So maybe you can do it on a straightaway, or if you're trying to pass somebody, or just try to have some fun. I really like that. It kind of asks for a lot of attention, and if I had this, I'd probably be pressing that a lot, because just like in the old video games we used to play, or you know, it's almost like hitting the NOS button like if we're in Fast and the Furious. It's kind of a cool thing. Guys, it's really hot in here, so forgive me for keep touching myself, but it's I'm sweating like a pig. One thing that is cool with these cars now is that you have a front axle lift. Now, the footage that we're getting of the car is actually the car in the down position, and there's more than enough space for you to traverse any dicey looking driveways or entranceways or parking garages or anything like that. But if you're like me and you lower every car that you buy, it's a really nice feature because it kind of gives you almost an inch or two of space when you want to raise the front axle. Another cool feature these 992s have, whether it's the 0.1 or 0.2, is that you can program your front axle lift geographically, and it uses navigation or GPS to know when to lift. So let's say your street to get to your house is not that great. Every time you come home and enter your street, it will know, and it'll automatically raise the lift for you. So you don't have to reach all the way over here and press this button conveniently located right here. You have an exhaust button. I mentioned this before. The one manufacturer that, you know, has really made this popular is Porsche, and this car is no exception. So this car has an active exhaust system with active flaps to kind of change the way that the car sounds. This changes when you go from one driving mode to the next, but you can also just keep it in comfort and just want to make some noise. You just press that button right there. They retained a lot of buttons, which is another thing that I like, and the most important thing is they retain some knobs. They retain some knobs in order for me to control my volume and stuff like that. Not a whole lot of touch sensitive buttons in here, but your console is touch sensitive. The next thing about this particular spec that I like is that the interior is called what Porsche calls race tex. Feels like Alcantara, basically. So it's there's no leather on the inlays of the seats, but the edge of the bolsters of your upper body and your thighs, these are stitched in leather, but the middle of the seat feels like Alcantara or race tex, like I said. Now, I've mentioned before too in other cars that we reviewed is that this is just for grip. So when you're taking corners and things like that. And if you ask me, it's a little bit more breathable. So if you have the leather seats, I would definitely encourage you to get the cooled seat feature, because this way it prevents a lot of back sweat from forming when you're driving. And if you're driving with the top down, I'm gonna guess it's probably gonna be hot. So that would be a nice feature to have. But the race tex, although it doesn't look as luxurious as the other options that you can have, I think looks great, and I kind of like that minimalist, purposeful kind of spec or option. One thing that's changed for 992.2, it's not a big one, and you wouldn't know unless you had them side by side, is that your instrument cluster has changed. So it's still fully digital. You have many different modes that you can alter the information that you see. But one thing that's new for 992.2 is that if it had equipped with Sport Chrono, which this one is, you put it into different driving modes, your tachometer in the middle just kind of gets larger. And the information on the side are all performance related vitals, like your water temperature, oil pressure, oil temp, voltage, you know, things like that. So it gives you all the performance related information that you need, and the only ones that are actually, you know, important when you want to screw around. With a Targa, you still have the back seats. They're just as small as they are in a regular 911. Good for small people, duffel bags, small luggage, parcels, things like that. But it's really neat because you have this crossbar kind of go over your occupants, and you have that giant window in the back, which beautiful piece of glass. The race tex patterning on the seats is carried on the doors. So the doors are actually stitched in leather. That's one thing I like about some of these 911s is that you can really go nuts with what you want stitched in leather. Everything from your fuse box cover to your dashboard to the top of your door here. So it's all black leather with a black stitch, and the race tex is in the middle of the door card here, and with Alcantara or race tex, sorry, door grips and elbow rests on your door. The dry carbon interior there's really only a couple pieces for it, and one is the one that goes across the dash. I like how the dash is all nice and straight. I don't like dashes that are too curvy or too complicated. This looks very easy on the eyes for me and looks pretty symmetrical. But you have your carbon here, right above your revised light control module and start stop button, and your steering wheel trim. Also right around here in your cup holder. Okay, so we're gonna take the car for a quick little boot now. I gotta make one complaint. A lot of cars today these days, actually. Porsche has this thing called connected services. So every time I turn the car on, I need to log in or do some bullshit like that. Why can't I just turn on the car and go and just show me all the information that I want? They collect all this data, and there's so much privacy settings and legal privacy policy. Why do I need to look at this when I'm just trying to go for a drive? I gotta go through like 3 different menus and make 8 different decisions just before I can see what's on my console here. Like, I understand that's kind of where we're going and stuff, but it's a little daunting. Like, sometimes I just want to drive, and I like cars that show a lot of technology, but you know, I just wish it was a little bit easier to use. Another thing I like about 911s is that I don't care how big some of my customers are. You could be tall, you could be wide, they all fit in a 911. No one's ever sat in a 911 and been like, you know what, this is too small for me. And you can kind of tell I'm 6'1", and I always put the seat as low as possible. I want to be as low in the car as possible, not only for weight distribution, but because that's just where I want to have a good amount of headspace and stuff like that. And there's lots, okay? Lots. So right now I'm just going to be in normal mode, or like comfort, just till we get the oil warmed up. Since this car is a hybrid now, there's a lot of extra information that's shown on your instrument cluster when you're driving, like the state of charge of the battery and how much battery power that you're using, and kind of gives you metrics on efficiency and use of that electric tech that I was kind of telling you about. So right in the middle of my instrument cluster, you have the tachometer front and center where it should be, and you have a picture of a battery that kind of lets you know the state of charge, the range relative to how much fuel you have, stuff like that. So I think while we're waiting for the engine to warm up, I want to describe to you exactly how the hybrid tech works. So one thing that the car has is it's got 2 electric motors. One is on your turbocharger, and one is built into the PDK transmission, okay? So the good thing about electric motors is that they provide instantaneous torque. So the power that is used for these motors are actually come from a brand new 400 volt battery, which is actually sitting right behind the dash. That's what kind of holds and harnesses the power that you are able to recuperate, and recuperates power in a couple different ways. So first I want to talk about the turbocharger. So the turbochargers generally, what they do is they use exhaust gas from the engine to spin a turbine. That turbine takes air, compresses it, and shoots it into the engine. When you shoot compressed air into the engine, your engine compensates by adding more fuel, because when you do combustion and you're shooting compressed air in there, you get more combustion, and your engine management system compensates by adding more fuel. This is how you get more power out of a traditional turbocharger. So they're exhaust gas driven. Now the electric turbocharger in these new T hybrids in the 911 have an electric motor that's attached. So the benefit to this is that if I want a power boost, probably from that red button that I was talking to you about, telling you about before, you can use that electric motor on the turbocharger to spool it almost instantly. This gets rid of any turbo lag whatsoever. So despite the fact that the car is turbocharged, you're not waiting for that power to flow in. I remember the first time I took out a 993 911 turbo, we were doing some extended road tests on this car that we just took in stock, so I had to take it home a couple nights. And this is 993 is just before 996, so the engine, I believe, was a 3.6 or a 3.8. Someone's going to correct me if I'm wrong. But it had 2 very large turbochargers on it. And one time I was taking a highway on-ramp and I kind of buried the pedal, and then the turbochargers ended up spooling up. And once those turbochargers on that car spooled up, it was like a big rush of power. I'm already in a bend, the car's all-wheel drive, and the car just started going straight. Honestly, guys, I shit my pants. Now, they've tried to mitigate that with other technology since then, like with variable vane turbochargers, so you can alter the angle at which the exhaust gases hit the turbocharger and how effective it is at spooling it up. But when you have an electric motor that can spool up that turbo, this gets rid of any lag and makes the car far more predictable. Now, for those of you that know a little bit about electric technology, when it comes to electric motor, inherently is also a generator. So when you're driving along and you want
that turbo to be spooled and you want power and you want it right this second, that electric motor on the turbocharger will spool it, okay? But since that electric motor also has recuperation properties, that's when it uses your exhaust gas in order to spin that motor and turn it into a generator. So the same motor that gives that turbo more power is also works as a generator to recoup energy and put it right back into that 400-volt battery that I was describing to you. That second motor that I was telling you about is built into the PDK transmission. So as if PDK transmissions with its double clutch wasn't cutting edge enough, now they put an electric motor in there to help with that torque delivery. And like I said, this car has about 450 foot-pounds of torque. So to have that in a car of this size put through an all-wheel drive system is very impressive, and makes the car far more predictable and far more potent. That electric motor in the PDK transmission is also a generator. So when you're decelerating, it generates. When you're hitting the gas and you want power, it provides power, you know, as an electric motor. Really neat stuff. This stuff was kind of born in motorsport, as is most performance tech that we see in sports cars these days. So one way I've heard it being referred to is KERS, K-E-R-S, Kinetic Energy Recovery System. So a lot of these cars, like the F1 cars and stuff like that, they have a similar battery like this car has, where it can actually hold power that's regenerated through the brakes and through the transmission and things like that, and saves it for when you want little power boost at strategic points depending on whatever circuit that you're on. So that technology always kind of is born in on the racetrack, but kind of you know, modified and used based on the same general principles for passenger cars, or in this case sports cars, and it's done really well. First time we saw something like this, I think, was in correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was in the LaFerrari. So that car was has a naturally aspirated V12 hybrid system, and I don't think there's any car that better exemplifies weaponizing that electric technology to make the car faster, because in the LaFerrari you can't go in electric only mode, but it uses a lot of the same features that I just described for this car in order to kind of propel it, and it's some really nice stuff. Now, when you have all this hybrid tech in this car, not only does it make it more potent as a sports car, it also makes it more efficient. So despite this engine being having a larger displacement than the one prior in 992.1, the car is far more efficient and it uses less fuel and has less carbon dioxide. This is especially impressive considering that you have extra weight and a bigger engine. So that stuff usually hurts your fuel economy. In this case, it makes it a little bit better. I complained to you guys before about how when you're in ordinary modes or default modes, when you fire up with a lot of these cars, that the car will turn off at traffic lights and stuff like that. Just so you guys know, that sort of technology where the car stops at traffic lights, this equates to a single percentage, not 1%. I mean something like 6-7% in efficiency when it comes to fuel. But when you're trying to kind of deal with the EPA and other regulatory agencies like that are kind of jumping down your throat with regard to how much carbon dioxide your car emits, every little bit counts. But simple solution to that, aside from a button that would turn off that feature, is to just put the car into Sport Plus. So now this car is a little bit awake now. Engine's making some nice noise. Oh yeah. You can hear the turbo whir, or like the turbo spooling, and also when I let off the fuel, you can hear the wastegate as well. And I think that's a nice feature. A lot of the cars that were turbocharged in other luxury cars and stuff like that, there's lots of measures put into place so you don't hear that stuff. I like hearing that stuff, especially when I'm in a car like this. So being all-wheel drive, this car has something called PTV. PTV stands for Porsche Torque Vectoring. So it's able to vector torque from one side to the other, front axle to the back. It does that really well. Revised for this car over 992.1. Another thing that's revised is PASM, or PASM, Porsche Active Suspension Management, which is a fancy way of saying adjustable dampening. So you can go from stiff to soft, or let the car decide. Ooh. I like that sound. You know, for a car that's bone stock, it's pretty lively and really lets you kind of hear that exhaust. Okay, let's wait till we drive by this cop and then we can have some fun. So when you integrate all this hybrid stuff, like I said, one thing I told you earlier was that it makes the car a little bit more predictable. When it's more predictable, despite being turbocharged, despite having all this hybrid tech and stuff like that, the power band is pretty linear. That's what makes it a little bit more predictable. Unlike that 993 turbo I was telling you about, because when those things spool up, the thing just takes off like a rocket ship. You don't hear engine anymore. All you hear is suction. It also makes, when you have that electric motor inside your transmission, it kind of makes your shifts a little bit smoother. Whoa, this thing corners amazing. I'm not surprised. I shouldn't be surprised. With these 911s, if you have like a sweeping bend, just don't even touch the brake. I don't even hear tires squeal. I just took that bend at like 103, which is not breaking any records, but a lot of cars would be really nervous at that same corner. Now the cool thing is when I'm in Sport Plus on this car, I got my tach dead center, right? With 4,000 RPM as if it's 12 o'clock. So at about 2 o'clock and 10 o'clock, you have these little yellow markers. And as I'm shifting, these markers start to fill up the top of the tachometer, and when they hit the middle, they blink as a way to kind of indicate for me to shift. I think that's kind of a nice feature. This is a good thing about having a digital instrument cluster. Like this stuff can display an array of information in an array of different ways. I go over these speed bumps and I'll punch it. They still kept a bit of drama with this, which is, like I said, sometimes you sacrifice a bit of drama when you integrate some of this advanced hybrid tech, but they still kept the car lively. So when you have cars that have this type of technology, when you kind of start them, you don't hear a starter going bam, 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 and then the engine fire up. The engine just kind of comes to life, and it sounds really cool. It was kind of took a bit of getting used to, but it was really, really neat. Because the first time I witnessed that technology myself was in the new S-Class, which came out in 2021. It didn't have a starter sound. The car just kind of came to life. It's really neat, actually. See, when you got the four-wheel steering, it's easy to go into these tricky parking spaces at work. Doesn't take much adjustment, and if you have with enough practice, you get it right the first time, and you park perfectly. Car already just relative to its size, it's already very easy to park. But anyway, thanks for riding with me, guys.
I don't think any manufacturer does a good job of showcasing tomorrow's technology whilst retaining yesterday's iconic looks. Let me know what you think. Don't forget to like and subscribe.